Welcome to Stone Cold Stros. I'm Brandon Strange with Charlie Palillo and Josh Jordan. You can follow them on X at Palillo and at Josh Jordan 975. And in between our episodes here, you can read their blogs covering all things Houston sports over on sportsmap.com. On today's episode, the scrappy Astros keep getting off the mat. By God, is that Jose Altuve and Christian Walker's theme music? Houston's bullpen says "King me," and an ex-Astro finds himself in a familiar predicament, and how that adds another wrinkle to an ongoing debate this season. Just a reminder, hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications so you know when new content drops. And when you're on the go, we're on all your favorite podcast apps. Just search Stone Cold Stros. So guys, the headline from the weekend obviously was Houston taking 3 of 4 from the first place Mariners, putting their season series at 4-3 with their next matchup in July. Houston is 8-6 in the division, game and a half out of first, and currently sitting in one of those wild card spots as we're recording this. They are on pace by my rudimentary calculations for 86 wins. Look, considering the struggles of the offense for most of the season, the questionable roster construction that we've documented here, not having Jordan for basically the entire month of May, and having 3/5 of their starting rotation currently sitting on the IL, I guess my question is, could you make the case that the Astros are actually overachieving right now, Charlie?
You can. I think when taken in the scope of a pretty weak American League, then not so much. The Astros have the 4th best run differential, which can be misleading, right? They've outscored their opponents by something like 24 runs, which is a better split than, say, the only team ahead of them, barely ahead of them now in the American League West in Seattle. Right? The Yankees and Tigers are obviously better than the Astros and better than everyone else in the American League. But after that, who at this point, for the Astros scuffles and injuries, who would you say, oh yeah, they're better than the Astros right now in the American League? Minnesota? Cleveland? Anyone other than the Yankees in the American League East? Kansas City? No. So I think the Astros are nestled in there, and the backbone of the operation remains the 1-2 atop the rotation. Hunter Brown, who's been pretty relentlessly magnificent, and Framber Valdez, who I know causes some angst for many, but when it all comes out in the wash at the end of the season, Framber seems to be on track to be the guy who's been a top 10 starting pitcher in Major League Baseball over the last 4 years, right? 4 consecutive strong outings, at least 6 innings in all of them, at least 7 innings in 3 of the 4, an ERA of 1.93 over the stretch, now down to 3.39 for the season. If that 1-2 does its work over nearly 400 innings between them, the Astros are going to absolutely be in at least the wild card race. And from one weekend, you don't want to overjudge. But if you want to say Seattle a little bit, coming here and having its offense shut down. And when all's said and done, end of September, right, there's still 9 more games to be played. But not only that Sunday win, you mentioned Christian Walker's music, right? The thrill of the moment. But taking that series, I mean, not a massive pendulum swing, but a 2-game swing in the standings. Right, 1.5 going into Tuesday night as opposed to 3.5 back of the Mariners. And let's keep tab on tiebreakers, which obviously made a massive impact a couple of years ago. Astros Rangers for the division title. And the Astros a leg up at 3-1 over Seattle early, a team versus which it lost the season series last season, but fortunately it didn't come down to that.
I think maybe for the back end of the rotation, you could say they're overachieving a little bit. Some of these young guys coming up from Sugar Land and keeping the Astros in ball games. I think the other thing to keep in mind is other teams are dealing with injuries too, right? Nobody's 100% healthy, so that plays into it. I think with the Astros, it is kind of a wash in a sense that some of the guys we weren't expecting to be playing this well are, and that's great. But there's also guys on the team that we really expected to be playing much better, and they're not. So when you put all these things together, for me, it kind of balances out.
Yeah, and going to the lineup on that to put names to the exact point that Josh is making there. Very good Seattle series for Jose Altuve. Now, was that just a really good series? Or, hey, welcome to the season, Jose, right? 8 for 13 or 8 for 17 against the Mariners. Only 1 strikeout over the course of 4 games. The 2 home runs, doubling up insurance policy in the series opener Friday after they'd had a sizable lead. But hey, they count. And Altuve is obviously a critical component, being at worst in the top third of the batting order unless a drastic change is in the offing to come. The OPS is still 685, which is bad, but it's 50 points better than it was less than a week ago. And we'll presume Jordan's coming back at some point, now having missed approaching half their games to this point in the season. That's a boost. Walker's overall numbers are still pitiful. So you expect him to gain some for those waiting for Jake Myers to come back to reality. Well, maybe there's a medium there where he's not going to be 300 hitting Jake with an OPS of 770, from which he came out of the Mariners series. But that doesn't mean that he needs to be 190 hitting. Oh my God, get this guy out of the lineup, Jake Myers of June through the end of last season. If he settles in as a 260 hitter, OPS 725 range, that plays in an overall lineup. Will Isak Paredes be an 870 OPS guy at the end of the year? I'm not going to completely rule it out. On pace for 33 home runs, about 95 runs batted in. Well, he hit 31 home runs a couple of years ago. And Jeremy Pena is the other guy who's made a substantial leap so far this season, but not a leap that I think you're saying, well, he's over his head. He had a huge month. He's not playing like an MVP candidate, but he's playing like a really good player. OPS almost 800, up from barely over 700 the first 3 seasons of his career. So if Pena can generally sustain what he's at, Altuve, Walker pick it up, and then you get the boost of Jordan, that should be a solid lineup. Nothing approaching what the Yankees are doing so far this season, but the Yankees are lapping the field. It'll probably do for some regression in their lineup, but I will circle back to Fromber, Hunter Brown, or Hunter Brown Fromber, 1-2 that stands in there with any top of the rotation tandem in the game, and the bullpen continues to be on balance spectacular.
And about Altuve and Christian Walker, I know the team is grateful to finally get rest and finally reach the end of that stretch of 17 games in 17 days. But those two specifically may not have wanted to see a day off, considering they had finally hit their stride. Just a quick message: if you're interested in advertising your service or product on this show, you can contact our friends at the sales team at houston.sportsmap.com/advertise. The link is in our description. Now, on the topic of positive production, 3 Astros players currently sit and the top 35 defenders and outs above average. Mauricio Dubon is the top second baseman overall at 6 outs above average. Jake Myers is number 20 overall, but is the second highest among AL center fielders. You know who is the second highest among AL right fielders? I'll give you a hint. He didn't play the position before this season and wasn't even in the minors last year. Yeah, Cam freaking Smith. Besides the defense over his last 10 games, Cam is hitting .436, slugging .500, and has raised his season OPS to .732. Look, it was part spring training performance, part necessity that landed Smith on the opening day roster, but it's been his ongoing production on both sides of the ball that has earned him his playing time. And the hot button debate this season was whether or not Houston should have traded Kyle Tucker. But if Cam Smith turns out to be this guy, combined with the outstanding production, Charlie, that you touched on from Isak Paredes, do you think the Tucker trade is actually positioned Houston to be a stronger team in the long term?
If you just were not going to pay the piper to keep Kyle Tucker, then yes. I mean, the final verdict obviously is not in a couple of months into Cam Smith's big league career, but all the early indicators are fine. His overall production for a guy who's hitting in the bottom third of the lineup as a 22-year-old, fine. You mentioned the work in right field. He's part of an Astros defense, which remains sensational. Around the infield, Walker, 3 straight Gold Gloves. You covered Dubon, and while Brendan Rodgers is an offensive atrocity, when he's been in the field, he'd been a solid second baseman. We know about Pena at short. Isak Paredes, to me, has been surprisingly good, at least given his reputation. I think he's played a very solid third base. You covered 2/3 of the outfielders with the elite numbers. And Altuve will never be a plus left fielder, but he's not an abomination out there. And with what Dubon and Rodgers give them defensively, that's the whole point of the Astros thinking on the move of Altuve, about as bad as it gets, defensive metrics numbers at second base, to now elite defensively at second base. So, if Kyle Tucker, 1 year of Kyle Tucker at an MVP level, had the Astros ridden it out with him versus 3+ years of Paredes, 6+ years of Cam Smith, with Paredes' numbers in the relative ballpark of Kyle Tucker's. Dana Brown, shouldn't be taking victory laps just yet, but he should be quite pleased where that transaction sits at this point.
Yeah, it's just a bummer. Hayden Wesneski, you don't have him to chip in. Imagine what we'd be talking about now, because he was on a nice trajectory. We were liking the way he was pitching until he got hurt. I guess kind of the long haul is where I'm like, what do we consider that? Because Paredes is going to be gone in 2028 if we go by the Astros track record. So that's something to keep in mind, that perhaps Cam Smith takes his spot at third base, and then now you have a hole in right field again. I don't know how they're going to play it, or maybe they leave Cam Smith in right field. I don't know. I need to see a little more from Cam. I like what's going on here, but it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about is Enzo or him the better option right now. But I did do a little digging, Brandon, when you posed this question. Cam's hitting over 300 over his past 30 games. So it's not something that's just within the last week or two where we've started to see something from him. So I'm liking the way he's progressing. But we've also kind of seen when he gets hot, he's taken a step back a couple times over the course of this year, where you're really starting to believe, and then he kind of falls off, and then his playing time kind of diminishes, and then they start working him back in again. Hopefully we're past that, right? And this is a deal where this is kind of who he's going to be. I don't necessarily think he's going to be a 300 hitter for his career, but if he's at least just a solid addition in the lineup where you're not thinking about, should I play him today? It's just kind of a foregone conclusion that, yeah, he's one of the starters. He needs to play. He's young. He needs to get experience. I like the trajectory. We'll see where it goes. But overall, I think with Paredes likely gone in 2028, I don't know. I think Cam Smith's going to be a great player. I don't know if he's ever going to reach the levels of what Kyle Tucker has accomplished.
Yeah, and Cam Smith's 22. So there's still going to be bumps in the road, but he absolutely looks like he belongs. And in the historic context of big league baseball, there's just a vast difference in assessing a guy's potential when he proves he belongs in the major leagues. Doesn't have to be tearing it up at 22 years old as opposed to 24, 25, which is why Cam Smith is so much more substantial as a hope for stardom with the Astros. It could be there with this guy. Jacob Melton, virtually no chance. Bryce Matthews, the clock is ticking. Your DeCenzos and Shea Whitcombs, forget it. Cam Smith, if not central casting, a guy you look at and say, wow, there's 5-tool potential with this guy. And going back to his time at Florida State was one concern. Will he elevate the ball enough to put that power in play? Work in progress, but the thunder is in the bat. And while he wouldn't be a top 2 or 3 rookie of the year guy at this point in the American League, if we're playing a long game in Cam Smith, that's a stock no one should be thinking about, well, would we sell on this if we could?
Yeah, but I'd say from my end, there was no reason for me to think that he would be this good, though. He's a rookie who had never played above double A ball. So the fact that you're getting this sort of production out of him, I think, is super positive. He's hit the ground running, which, Charlie, as you said, has been a challenge for so many of the Astros prospects down in the farm system. And the patient at-bats is already a really good element that you hope rubs off on some of the Astros players. Actually, to give credit where it was due, we did see a little bit more patient at-bats, especially against Luis Castillo. We saw much more patient approaches at the plate during the series. Let's move over to...
Yiner's won 3 walks since we last gathered. Good to know that he's taking Stone Cold Stros suggestions to heart. Atta baby, Yiner!
I should everyone. Let's move over to another bright spot, but this time on the pitching side. Last year's bullpen was nothing to write home about. Brian Abreu had a 3.10 ERA, Ryan Presley 3.49, Josh Hader 3.80. But in the tradition of relief pitching being volatile from year to year, this season Abreu has an ERA of 1.90, Hader 1.57. The third head on Houston's 7.89 bullpen monster is a guy that seemingly came out of nowhere. Drafted 9-12 overall in the 2019 draft by the Cubs, poached away by Houston in the 2022 Rule 5 draft. Brian King. Now we got a glimpse of King last year over 28 games. He looked good with a 2.39 ERA. He has picked right up where he left off last season and has carved out a spot for himself as one of the best leverage relievers on this team currently. He's at the time of this recording currently carrying a 1.50 ERA. Now, my best guess is their vision for King was to be a lefty specialist out of the pen. Maybe I'm guessing they saw either Taylor Scott or Caleb Ort, as potential seventh inning guys in the long term. But Scott, turned back into the pitcher he was before coming to Houston, and then Ort's oblique strain opened up an opportunity that King has fully taken advantage of. Now, the success of relief pitching, as we've discussed here many times, is fickle, often fleeting. But do you guys think Brian King passes the eye test as a guy who can be a long-term answer at leverage relief for the foreseeable future?
I do. I saw it last year. I was hoping that he would take this role and not let it go. I know he doesn't throw 97 miles an hour or anything like that, but another one of those guys that the Astros are like, well, let's find out what he does well and try and amplify that. And they've done it. He's got good command, and he may live around 93 miles an hour, but it's a sneaky 93. I think guys pick it up a little bit late. It's a little deceiving, and it works. You can see that guys, they don't see his fastball as an easy pitch to get to. So whatever it is, whether it's extension or if it's just hiding the ball better, guys pick it up late, kind of like Christian Javier. Perhaps he doesn't have the type of, the up, the spin that Javier gets, but he does have some of that deception, and being left-handed, I think that helps too. So I thought he could be that guy, and he's proven me right. I'm excited. My only deal is let's not give him $30 million just yet. Let's not Montero this. We didn't feel the need to give Abreu all the money yet. So let's just kind of hold tight and see where it goes from here. But we can only go off what he's shown us. And last year, and remember, in some big situations against Bryce Harper, Espada was going to him last year, and he's kind of proven that he was worthy of that trust. And when he comes in the game this year, especially when you're seeing Abreu or Hader, they need the night off or something like that, I don't have any issue when King comes in. I feel like he's going to get the job done.
Yeah, he needs more bulk before we really should anoint King relief pitcher royalty. He's within a couple of innings of what he threw last year. You combine the totals, we're at right about 50 innings. So sample size matters, but in terms of eye test, and I'll give you a 1-2 in his toolkit that say, hey, legit. Doesn't walk guys, and he keeps it in the ballpark. He gave up one home run in his 26 and a third innings, whatever it was last year. He's given up one home run in his 23 innings of work this season, right? From Presley to Hader last season to Montero when he fell apart, right? You always feared the gopher ball. King, always seen of him as a major leaguer with the Astros, 2 home runs allowed in about 50 innings. And don't walk a leadoff hitter. Brian King's walked 6 guys in 23 innings and change so far this season. So he's been really good. Be mindful of not overworking him. Not an issue to this point. He's on pace to throw about 70 innings for the season. And as a lefty, with a little different look, you mentioned deception, right? Since they moved to the rule of, hey, you have to face at least 3 batters if you're coming in mid-inning or starting an inning. But you can't be the left-handed specialist in the way that you could in years past, where a sidearmer or a guy who just had awful split numbers, you'd bring him in to get out one tough lefty, and all right, you did your job. You need more than that. And Brian King does not have splits that have you covering your eyes when right-handed hitters come into play.
Yeah. In speaking of relievers who have fallen off, I don't think anyone should go look at Ryan Presley's stats right now. Although I know he's put together a few good games, a few scoreless innings over his past 4, but the beginning of the month was not kind to Ryan Presley. Now, if you are speaking of former Astros, if you're a regular consumer of the show, we've been covering Alex Bregman's season from afar. One of the AL headlines that came out of the weekend was Bregman, who had been having a terrific season, is now sidelined with what they are calling a significant quad injury. Now, no one knows better than Houston fans about Bregman's history with lower body soft tissue injuries. This really sucks for Breggy, and we wish him a speedy recovery. But this is a baseball podcast, so we have to talk about the implications of this. We've talked about how up until this point, there was an argument there that Houston should have found a way, and some of our comments have made that Houston should have found a way to have held on to Alex Bregman. Does this injury ostensibly end that debate, Charlie?
Well, I thought the money just got absurd, and within the Astros' self-set payroll parameters and the multiple levels of CBT thresholds they'd have crashed through, they did not go cheap on Bregman, and their payroll without him is in the top 10. But Astros Paredes at under 6.7 million versus Alex Bregman for 40 million. Attendance is part of the grade. And while Bregman had recovered in that area the last couple of years, given his history, he's in his 30s, and guys generally don't stay healthier as they move through their 30s. So, yes, there should be no schadenfreude involved for any Astros fans who felt dissed by Bregman, as opposed to the Astros not going the distance to keep Alex Bregman. But he probably gone at least a month, or he's gone for more than 2 months when he popped the quad here 4 years ago. And then you throw in the in-season flexibility to maybe make a move if you need to, a la Kikuchi last season. If you had $40 million of Bregman on the books, or what other moves would they have made to trim here, trim there? So, if you want to view it as having dodged a bullet, I wouldn't call that unfair.
The injury doesn't change anything for me there. Just there is a world where you could have kept Bregman and had Paredes playing first base, and then you didn't spend all that money on Christian Walker. Like there is a world where that could have been the thing, but they decided to go another way. Also, with the injury, I mean, Jordan's been out for half the season almost. We wish the Astros hadn't extended him because of that. And I mean, how much time did Tucker miss last year? So I'm not going to jump to that conclusion there. I don't have buyer's remorse on Jordan because seemingly almost every year he misses time with hand injuries or knees or something like that. Injuries are part of baseball. It's part of the deal. So that's not going to concern me too much. And before that, Bregman was an MVP candidate. I just think this is a deal where the Astros had their parameters, and they don't like doing these opt-out type deals because at the end of the day, you could have had Bregman for cheaper than, Tuve, or not that much more than you paid for Hader. It's just they didn't like that type of contract. Jim Crane he did that with Correa too. The offer's the offer, and I don't like the way he operates, but it's his team. So he gets to make those calls. I hope the Astros do well. And I hope, Bregman gets back healthy, but I just would have loved to see what it looked like with what Paredes is doing. And then with what Bregman was doing to start the season. Imagine what this offense could have looked like, especially knowing with hindsight that Jordan's missed almost half the season.
I hear what you're saying. I think my instinct, though, is if all things are equal and you're telling me that there's a possibility that you lose Bregman to a quad, we know in the past, how long it's taken him to get back from those and how much speed it's robbed out of his game over those couple of years that he struggled with it. So I think on my end, I think this does close the book on whether they should have capped him or not. Even though injuries are part of the game, yeah, Jordan's missed 30 games or whatever it's been, but I mean, his much younger, much higher upside. So I think I'll take the way things have fallen. But the Christian Javier is one. That's a good question. I mean, do you regret the extension on Christian Javier, considering how much time he's missed with TJ? And we don't have an ETA for him. Quite frankly, we don't have an ETA for Jordan, but we trust the fact that since he was allowed to talk to the media, that maybe he's a little closer. But final thoughts before we're out the door.
Balance of this homestand, the two with the Athletics, just the Athletics, and then 4 with the Rays. End of the week, the Astros will have played 34 home games versus 25 road games. So when the rubber hits the road, the Astros need to start playing more competent baseball, right? They haven't won a road series since early April. It's a road trip that'll take them to Pittsburgh, which is lousy, to Cleveland, which is in the middle class with the Astros. So they're going to need to pick it up on the road because it'll be time to play schedule balance, right? They'll play 9 more home games than road games when they get through this Sunday.
Yeah, for me, it's, can the back end of the rotation hold up and keep the bullpen from wearing out as we're waiting for Arrighetti to come back? And please tell me that what we're seeing from Altuve and Christian Walker is going to continue and not just, a splash in one series.
Yeah, knock on wood for that. One last reminder, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to click like on the video. And if you listen on podcasts on apps like Apple or Spotify, give us a 5-star rating. We do appreciate it. Next scheduled episode drops on Thursday, so make sure you're subscribed to this channel, Sports Map Houston, on our other channel, Sports Map Texans, as we're going to ramp up coverage as we get closer to the season. But we also drop emergency episodes as big news breaks, so make sure those notifications are on. Thanks for listening. For Charlie and Josh, I'm Brandon saying so long, and until next time, go Stros.